Thank you and good evening. Welcome to the February 24th Financial Planning Committee meeting. And before we start the meeting, I have this little paragraph I have to read. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. This meeting will be, and is, live streamed, but will have no option for public participation. With that, first item of business is the approval of the February 16th minutes. Do I have a motion?
A motion to approve the minutes, please.
I see a second.
Second.
Mike, is there any discussion? Hearing none, if you guys remember, I have to call a vote. So I'll call on each of you and please give me your reply. Tom?
Aye.
John Rappa?
Yes.
Mike Hodge?
Aye.
And Bill Peterson?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Second item on the agenda is the capital requests for the DPW water and sewer. Is that you, John, or is
That's going to be Scott Charpentier. I'm going to share screen, if that's all right with you. And we've got a presentation in the packet. And by the way, I know sometimes there's a bit of paper. If anybody would like us to send you hard copies of some of this stuff, you're welcome to. At the end, when we're done, you will get the whole capital plan with all projects by all departments for 6 years, and so we will be packaging that up over the next couple of weeks. But in terms of tonight's packet for DPW, you have the summary sheet. So these are the project summaries for Highway, Park, Cemetery, and then the summary for the water and the sewer enterprise. And for every project that is included in these 6 years, there's a corresponding project detail sheet. So as you know, the detail sheets are designed to have a brief description of the project, a photograph, and a summary of the financing and the timing of the project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over to Scott. You can refer to the summary here. Scott is going to run you through the projects, but obviously he'll spend the most time on the FY22 projects that he's requesting. So this year it's the roadway maintenance, the 1-ton dump truck with plow, and a 1-ton pickup truck. But he is going to kind of walk you briefly through the balance of the projects, as we do every year, because some projects have moved around. Some have been eliminated, some have been added, and then some have updated financial information. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott Charpentier.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll briefly give you an update on where we are. The pandemic shifted quite a bit of our capital projects from FY21, as you know, from last year. We're still in a economic recovery process from the pandemic. So again, we have some more shifts from 22 into 23. What you see before you is the summary sheet. I can give you a really quick executive summary of what has been shifted. The $115,000 1-ton dump truck you see is in FY22. That's a shift from last year's 21, as is the 1-ton pickup truck for $74,000. What was shifted to 22 but now is pushed out to further years is the culvert projects at $250,000, the front end loader at $251,000, and then the $343,000 20-ton truck. It's a plow truck and salt spreader. So those projects have been pushed forward. They were previously in 21, pushed to 22, and now they've been pushed to 23. That is the main reason why you see a large bubble occurring in FY23. So I'll go forward through the project detail sheets. There were no substantial COVID-related shifts on the water and sewer enterprise funds. They remain essentially as previously presented. So John, if you want to go to the detail sheets, I'll go through them. I'll go, as John indicated, I'll go through in a bit more detail the proposed FY22 requests, and then in a little briefer fashion, the out years. The first one you see is our roadway improvement and maintenance capital request for $310,000 in FY22. This is a standing capital item we've had for a number of years. It serves a substantial purpose in town in filling a financial gap that we suffer due to the state's level funding of Chapter 90 well over the past decade. Our goal and objective is to allocate up to $1.1 million between capital, operating, and the state's Chapter 90 $500,000 allocation, so we can maintain our roadway conditions. As I discussed at your prior meeting, our goal out of this capital item is to touch a minimum of 10% of our roads. So we have about 80 miles of road. That's 8 miles of road. We take a regional approach and an expansive approach. So we don't just spend the 1.1 on rebuilding one road from top to bottom. We'll utilize a series of different treatments. Some years we'll do a mill and overlay with crack fill and some chip seal. Other years we may do a full depth reconstruction. And there are some years where some of the funds get reallocated toward culverts or other drainage repair projects that are directly associated with roadway improvements. So the request again for this year is $310,000. We're in the process of developing our roadway program to be bid out in March. So our expectation again is to take a regional approach. These dollars are provided to us by the entire community, and expending the funds in just south of 290 or along some of the major corridors is not a fair and equitable distribution. So we try to take a regional approach to addressing all corners of town. You want to go to the next one? So this is our 1-ton 6-wheel dump truck. We have 7 of these in our fleet. The life expectancy is between 12 and 15 years. We proposed as our typical program to replace one of these trucks every other year. That allows us for a fleet replacement every 14 years. So the goal and objective is to replace a truck when it hits that 14-year-old age. These are the workhorse of our department. Everything we do in and around the roads that can be accommodated in a mid-sized truck is done with these vehicles. Snow removal operations is a critical component of their use. They're paired up with our large 20-ton vehicles when we're platoon plowing through town. You'll see the cost is proposed. The project cost is proposed at $115,000 this year. As part of our vehicle program, we repurpose other vehicles. So when we trade in one of our older vehicles, we don't necessarily purchase the new vehicle to replace its service. The oldest truck in the fleet is typically doing the nastiest job. It's doing patch, it's doing trash collection, it's managing some of the less clean and less desirable tasks in the department. So what we do is when we buy a new vehicle, we'll repurpose 1 or 2 other vehicles to kind of push them down the line. So that the oldest vehicle is the one that's being used in the kind of the dirtiest fashion. It gets us the longest life expectancy out of these vehicles, and it's an appropriate fleet treatment. So this capital item you'll see has this capital funding has approximately $12,000 allocated toward repurposing other vehicles. And this year specifically, we're looking to reallocate the hot box patch truck to an older chassis. We have future vehicle purchases under this capital item. You'll see in FY 23, 25, and 27. Again, our goal and objective has been to replace one of these vehicles every other year so that at their 14-year birthday, they get traded in. We have back-to-backs due to the pandemic impacts of last year. You'll see the series of vehicles being replaced. The goal and objective is, again, to replace them in that 14-year window. We utilize an industry escalation component for the out years. Where that exact number will fall in the future years will weigh partially on the CPI escalations, as well as what is needed for repurposing. See, we're proposing a replacement for a F-350. This is going to replace one of our oldest vehicles. It's actually a Chevy 2500. This vehicle was proposed to be replaced last year and was pushed out this year. We try to fit these smaller trucks into the bigger truck years in order to balance out the capital requests. There's a $16,000 worth of repurposing associated with this. A lot of that will be going toward outfitting an older vehicle to accommodate rapid response. So one of the goals and objectives of the department is, as an emergency responder, to get to the sites fast. So when we have, for example, a tractor trailer hit the Hudson Street aqueduct and we need to close the road at 7:30 at night, it's important to have a rapid responsive vehicle that has cones, lights, stop signs, all the equipment needed. So outfitting one of our older vehicles to be a rapid response emergency traffic vehicle is part of our repurposing for this vehicle. You'll see the out years, we have further replacements. One of the goals and objectives is to maintain a separation of vehicle years. We don't want to have a bundle of, 3 2018s. It's problematic from a fleet maintenance perspective and a fleet operation perspective. Again, this is another one that I indicated was pushed off due to the budgetary constraints of COVID-19. This is our culvert replacement program. So in 2019, we did a full culvert inventory and assessment throughout town. We identified over 75 culverts that the town owns, assessed their conditions. We have GIS located them all. They've all been mapped. We have a good idea of what our infrastructure looks like. Unfortunately, quite a bit of it looks like the photograph you see here. This is the culvert under Davis Ave. One of the challenges we had due to the culvert project capital request being pushed off, the culverts still need to be replaced. So we have to allocate funds from Chapter 90 of the operating budget in order to pay for these culvert replacements. As I described at your last meeting, you've seen culvert replacements in front of you, Rice Ave, Fisher Street. This year, we just bid out and awarded three more culvert replacements. And this is a very typical photograph of what some of our older corrugated metal pipe culverts look like. In addition to culverts, there is also some drainage failures that we have in and around town. A lot of our developments are getting old. They're reaching that 30-year, 50-year lifespan. And some of the drainage pipes in those roadways are in poor condition and failing. One of the challenges on the roadway program is, we identify a neighborhood that could use some roadway maintenance, a mill and overlay or a gutter mill and overlay. Well, if the drain pipes underneath are junk and they're broken and falling apart, we can't justify spending $500,000 paving a neighborhood if the pipes under it are failing. So we've done some assessments in different neighborhoods, specifically Aspet Hill. We're familiar with some drainage problems there. We have quantified some work scopes and costs for those things. This capital item, FY 23, 24, 26, will help in propagating our roadway maintenance program going forward.
Before, Scott, if I can just interrupt for a moment before we move on to the next project. Again, I just want to reiterate to the committee, I know you guys have been involved in the capital planning for many years, most of you. We've got some long-term members. And it's just important as you start to hear, requests for new services, new expansions, like new sidewalks around town. And as the master plan completed its work, one of the priorities is walkability, and that these are all goals that we should be striving for. But it has to be within the context of the resources that we have available to us. And you'll see later on in your agenda is the legislative priorities of the town. The number one legislative priority of the town of Northborough is to get the state to provide more Chapter 90 transportation funds so that we can maintain our roadways and our infrastructure and expand sidewalks and maintain the sidewalks, frankly, that we have already. That's the constraining factor. It's resources. And so nobody is going to argue that, yeah, we'd love to have sidewalks all over the town, but it needs to be in the context of what we can afford. And we certainly shouldn't be building new sidewalks if we're losing the infrastructure that we have now. And you've seen the analysis of the difference between maintaining a roadway that needs to be chip sealed versus once the base in the roadway is gone, it's 4 or 5 times as much to fix that roadway. So it's really important that we consistently maintain and invest in our roadway infrastructure. And then as new revenues and resources become available, we can then in a measured way talk about where we would like to expand and where we would like to expand. But just to come in and say, we spend $1.1 million a year, surely we could spend more of that on sidewalks. There's always an opportunity cost to do one infrastructure project over another. And it's important that context is always present when that discussion takes place. So again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's important anybody watching this at home understands that process and that context. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, John.
Hey, Scott,
So, yep.
I just had a quick question. What's the lifespan of those culverts that you're going to be putting in?
Well, we're not using galvanized corrugated metal anymore. The issue with that material is the sediment in the waterway will remove over time the galvanization, and that's why you see the corrosion on the bottom. That is literally sediment in the stream removing material until it's gone. So we utilize a reinforced concrete pipe that has an asphalt coating on the exterior where we have adequate space. If there is not adequate space, meaning there's a utility conflict somewhere, we'll use high density polyethylene, the black plastic pipe that is lined with flow channelizing head walls. But in all instances, we try to use reinforced concrete pipe, and that has a 75-year lifespan. So I'm going to go a little quicker through some of these equipments that you've seen before, but it's important to understand what we have before you is a front end loader replacement that's been pushed back from 21 to 22 and now at 23. We have 2 front end loaders in operation in the department, an 06 and a 2014. They serve purposes beyond what a lot of people may understand front end loaders do. You go to the mulch yard to get some mulch in your pickup truck, there's the loader filling up. If their loader goes down, they have to use a backhoe, they're going to survive. We had 16.5 inches of snow earlier this year. Our front end loaders go out in the streets and they clear the intersections so people can see around the corners. They make the roadways safe. Cul-de-sacs, plows can't get the road back to the gutter line on a cul-de-sac when there's 16.5 inches of snow. That's what the front end loaders do. The way that we remove the snow from tight municipal lots like the library or the senior center where the wheelchair accessible handicap spaces are with front end loaders. Our loaders don't operate as only material movers. They provide an essential emergency service to the community to maintain safety and access. So, having a loader go down and sending it to a shop for 3 weeks is a problem for a contractor, but he can survive. Having that happen to us in January is not acceptable. So we do a good job of maintaining our loaders when for example, this one that we're proposing in 2023, when it's replaced, we have a $14,000 amount in the capital item for refurbishing the 14 to make sure those fittings that are starting to corrode are all replaced. That's critical and important. So it's important to understand that you know, the services that DPW provides with our equipment. And again, this is another vehicle that was pushed off. Like, we don't want to see these backed up year to year. We have 11 of these in service. Our goal and objective is to replace one every other year. That gets us through about a 20-year replacement cycle. 20 years for a 20-ton truck that basically runs through salt all through, you know, through its entire life, is a caustic environment. We do our best to keep them well maintained, but after a 20-year lifespan, it's time for replacement. We do have funds in these capital items periodically for repurposing. In the event an older chassis goes in due to substantial corrosion, there may be an opportunity to repurpose one of the chassis in the middle to another use, such as a heated dump body. The reason you see the numbers floating around so much is that these are not all cookie cutter trucks. So the $343,000 is for a wing truck. It's a conventional truck, but it has the wing plow on the side of it. The $390,000, that's for a catch basin cleaning truck. It has the clamshell attachment on the back of it. The $300,000, that is a standard conventional two-wheel drive belly scraper rear discharge. 3 years ago, we purchased a four-wheel drive belly scraper, which was a unique truck as well. So that's why you see these prices go up and down. It's based on the specific truck. These trucks are all custom made. Mack, you don't go to a Mack dealership and test drive 3 or 4 of them and pick out the yellow one. You order it and you get it 18 months later when they're done building it. So that's it's unfortunately we have these backed up year to year, but again, we're hoping to get back on our every other year cycle going forward. So this is our first facility improvement project. You see, it's actually 2 tight tanks. The highway garage discharges our sewer to a septic system, very large septic system, but it goes to a septic system. We have mechanics bays and we have a wash area for the trucks. Both of those facilities, both of those locations discharge to floor drains. The floor drains go out to the septic system. That's not good practice for a septic system. It's not good for the bugs in the septic system. So we put together a plan to utilize 2 holding tanks. You'll see one with a small rectangle that's above the larger one. That ties in specifically to the mechanics bays. That's a very caustic liquid that comes out of there. It's nothing that we want to be mixing in with a large volume wash bay where the larger tank is. So they are tight tanks. We've sized those appropriately for periodic pumping. It's a mandate by the state that we don't discharge these things to a septic system. And we've presented that we do have a plan going forward on how to address this shortfall due to regulatory changes recently. So this is our bucket truck. It's our aerial lift truck. We use this for tree work in town. It's an interesting vehicle. It gets inspected every year. Every single weld on this on that aerial lift is inspected annually for safety compliance. And you can see through the inspections as years go by, the welds become a little more and more problematic, and you have more and more maintenance required with it. This is not the type of equipment that we want to duct tape back together and see if we can get 4 more years out of it. The thing about this vehicle is the chassis is good. I mean, the chassis doesn't see a lot of action. It drives out to a tree, it sits there and it idles for 3 hours while we remove that tree. So the drivetrain is good. The powertrain is a little different because the vehicle idles for a long time. So what we're proposing is a replacement in 2023. And as part of the replacement, when we approach that next fiscal year, we'll be looking at other repurposing needs specific to the chassis. This is our request for street sweeper. Ours are not white, they're yellow. the Mass DEP stormwater regulation, the EPA stormwater regulations, I'm sorry, now requires the streets to be swept twice a year throughout town. They used to be once a year. It's critical that we comply with our stormwater quality federal permits, and a periodic replacement of the street sweepers is warranted and needed for that compliance. So this is our 2005 backhoe replacement. We have 2 backhoes in operation, 2005 and a 2015. Getting a good 10 or 15 years out of backhoe is a job well done. This one is going to be approaching 19 years by the time it's replaced, and it's well timed to do that. And again, as part of our capital plan, as we get closer, we'll have firmer numbers, but we've incorporated funds in this capital request to include some rehabilitation work to the 2015. That's typically body work around the cab. When you look at a front end loader or backhoe, you don't think it really deteriorates, but that's all the iron. Where the deterioration occurs is in the cab, which is just regular vehicle metal, and in the hydraulic fittings. So those are the 2 primary locations where we do rehabilitation on this type of equipment. And this is our proposal for a stump grinder replacement. This has been pushed back year after year after year. Our 1996 Vermeer stump grinder, it's honestly, it's a beast. It just doesn't stop. It loves chewing stumps. The longer we keep it, the happier I am. It's a fantastic machine. It's nothing to look at, but it runs amazing. So we pushed it back again, and I'm knocking on wood. I hope we push it back again. But it's important to have this in the capital plan. When we remove a tree roadside, yes, the hazardous tree is gone. It's not going to fall anymore, but there's still a stump, and often those stumps are very close to encroaching on the roadway surface. So we need to grind those down to alleviate a safety hazard, especially in the wintertime. They're not seen. You can't see them under the snowbank, and people may think it's a safe area to pull off in the event of an emergency, and it's not. So stump removal is critical for DPW operations. So these are what are referred to as cemetery niches. You've seen these before in prior year presentations. Cemetery space is not infinite. Our cemeteries are filling up. There are ways to better utilize our space. One of the considerations is cemetery niches. These are starting to become more popular in this area. There's one actually in Framingham at St. Stephen's where my father's buried, and there's Shrewsbury just puts them in at their municipal cemetery. The use is for cremation remains. It's a very small footprint, and often these are located at the peripheral of a cemetery, specifically in locations where maybe groundwater doesn't allow full earth burials. You can't get an adequate safe depth, so you put a slab in with a decorative cemetery cremation niche, and it's a nice accent and treatment, and a cost-effective way to extend the useful life of a cemetery. So this is our sidewalk machine. It's referred to as a trackless. We have 2 of these in operation. The one you see before you is shown with a snowblower attachment on it. They also come with V-plows. Generally, we will utilize the snowblower attachment when snow depths exceed 6 inches. So if it's less than 6 inches, we'll go with the V-plow. If it's more than 6 inches, we'll use the snowblower. This piece of equipment can also be used for snow removal of snowbanks. In the event you had a blizzard, we have a 3-auger snowblower that has a 16-foot chute that can discharge directly into a dump truck in order to clear downtown areas. The difference between the V-plow and the snowblower during the operations, we can do all of the town with both machines operating with a V-plow in 8 to 10 hours. With the snowblowers, it takes 22 to 24 hours to do all of town. That's the reason why you'll see V-plows on a 4-inch storm. It's much more cost effective to get the job done. This is our utility tractor. It aids in a lot of services in and around town. And we help out with the schools with this tractor. It's kind of a utility tool. It does a lot of different things. It'll pull gang mowers. You can see this one with a rake on the back. It has a PTO attachment, so it can operate a lot of different pieces of equipment, including blowers, both snow blowers and leaf blowers. It's just a periodic replacement of our existing tractor with the same model. And this is our roadside mower, a roadside tractor. It's much larger than the one you saw previously. It actually has counterweights on the outside of it, so as the arm is extended out, the tractor is safe. It has a large blower on the back as well. It comes with typically 2 heads. The head you see is a flail head. It's a rotating drum that has a bunch of teeth on it. It allows a very controlled operation, roadside mowing in and around guardrails, guy wires, hydrants, and things like that. The other head you may see looks more like a mower deck, and it literally has mower blades under it. That's much more efficient. And if you have a large area to mow, it works fantastic. But it's not very delicate. It leaves quite the mess behind. So having both heads is critical, especially in some of the areas where we are very close to residential neighborhoods. So this is Memorial Field. You'll see Upper Memorial and Lower Memorial Field. Casey Field is on the right-hand side. There is no wheelchair accessibility to Lower Memorial Field currently. You may recall we did a capital improvement project at the field building to provide wheelchair accessible viewing area. There's handicap accessible parking. So we've done a lot of accessibility improvements at this facility. What we have not done yet is allowed wheelchair accessibility from the parking lot and the field building to the Lower Memorial Field. It's an important component to get people down there, not just with wheelchairs, but baby strollers, to watch their children and get to the ball field. We don't have a detailed scope of the project and how we're going to achieve this in the most cost-effective fashion, but it's important that it remains on the radar. So this one is relatively new to you. It is a dog park, a proposed dog park. Having a dog park in town became kind of in the forefront through the development of the master plan, as well as through the development of the open space and recreation master plan. It was identified as a top priority in both of those documents. You'll see it's broken up with funding under FY26 and then 27. One of the challenges with the dog park, as I bet you can imagine, is siting it and vetting it. You know, the dog parks are wonderful resources for communities, but they're not an easy thing to site. So finding the right location, making sure there's adequate public outreach and involvement in developing that location is critical, and it's time consuming. So that's why we proposed it over a 2-year cycle, 1 entire year dedicated to finding the location and fine tuning the layout so that it meets the needs of the community as well as the surrounding area. So I'm sure the image is breathtaking on this one. It's a brush disposal area. Currently, our brush disposal operations and leaf and yard debris is managed at the highway garage on a 7,500 square foot piece of land. The annual cost to remove that material twice a year, we do it twice a year because after spring cleanups, it's full. After fall cleanups, it's full. We need to empty that small piece of land out. So again, the cost just for the yard debris has been ranging between $80,000 and $100,000 a year to remove, and we carry that in the operating budget. It's a lot, and it's not common for a community with our size to have that kind of operation. Often there'll be a brush disposal and processing area somewhere in town owned by the municipality. So we're allocating $100,000 as a placeholder in FY '27 to site and permit that. Now, just like the dog park, siting a brush disposal area is not the easiest thing to do. Not only do you have to vet the site thoroughly from a permitting and environmental perspective, you also have to make sure the surrounding community and the surrounding neighborhood is aware that what it's going to be, and maybe even you do a beta test. You get a tub grinder out there with a couple loads of brush, so people can actually hear the sound of the operations and see if it's an acceptable use. So we have a placeholder out in '27 for this. It'll save us some substantial operating costs in the long run. So that's it for the general fund. John, do you want me to continue through the enterprise funds, or do you want to stop and see if there's any questions on general
Yeah,
fund?
maybe it makes sense to stop and see if anybody has any questions regarding the before we move into the enterprise funds, if there are any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can I go ahead?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, thank you for that. Just struck me as you were talking, any of the vehicles or other equipment that are combustion engines today, is any of that going to electric anytime soon that we need to start to think about, or is that too soon for big equipment?
I don't see the industry going in an electric direction for the larger equipment. The environmental controls on the larger equipment is changing almost annually. We're at Tier 4 clean diesel right now, which is a substantial difference from the Tier 2s we saw just 6 years ago. They're much more costly to purchase, but they're a lot cleaner. So that's the direction that the larger equipment is going in. Some of the smaller fleet vehicles, I've seen communities diverting toward hybrids. So for example, the pickup trucks, the F-350s, the challenge there is that you have to have adequate rolling stock on the mid-side vehicles, the 550s, the six-wheel dumps, because those F-350s won't be able to pull what they used to. More on the environmental conscious side. Some communities are going toward more battery-operated equipment when it comes to the lawn maintenance, the weed whackers, the blackback blowers, and those types of things. But we haven't seen the big equipment migrate yet.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Yep.
Question for John and for Scott.
Go ahead.
When a piece of equipment is fully depreciated, something that's, got a useful life for 10 or 12 or 14 years, as you've said, what do we do with the surplus value of that at the end of that? If it's depreciated to zero, what happens after that?
We trade in our vehicles and our equipment when we purchase. So for example, the Chevy, so 2003 2500, we were
Right.
proposing to trade that in last year, and we got a quote for the trade-in value of $500. So that's what we get. Our equipment, on the other hand, has a higher trade-in value for the exact reason I described, that our front end loader that we trade in is going to be better than the one that a landscaper is going to trade in,
Right.
because of the emergency service component and the high level of maintenance that we have on it. So for example, a brand new front end loader is about $285,000. We're proposing $251,000, and we have $14,000 to repurpose. So that tells you that we're getting a decent trade-in value for the old loader.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, if I could just chime in, John. So in the past, I've run auctions. As a municipality, you have two options. You can trade it in, or you can auction your surplus vehicles. I've done both to see if we can get better return with the auction. And frankly, you don't. There's a couple of reasons. One is it's very labor intensive to run an auction. Two, you don't always get the people showing up bidding that you would like. And so if you put a reserve on a vehicle, then the auction ends and nobody hits that number. And so you're still stuck with the piece of equipment anyway. And then last but not least, a lesser consideration, but a consideration nonetheless, is that, liability for somebody coming and buying a piece of our equipment. We used to sell at auction, we used to sell our police cruisers to taxi cab companies.
Right.
And we used to get top dollar because they have beefed up frame and the braking system, and we get top dollar. And then that market basically went away, and we just weren't seeing the return on investment for going through the auction process. And it's because we're a public entity, it is a long, laborious process. And then at the end, you still may be wound up stuck with the vehicle and have missed your trade-in opportunity. So just for efficiency and effectiveness, the trade-ins tend to be the best route for us. But we try everything usually.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
So we'll start the enterprise funds now. What you see before you is our SCADA project that stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. What it does is it's a fixed network. It's not on the the general computer system in town. It's a very secure system, and it allows remote monitoring and operations of our water and sewer facilities. So, for example, we had a communication failure a couple times at our water valve. The result is the valve was not talking to the water garage, and the water garage was then not communicating with the tank. So when that happens, your tank level can get low, and you have to manually come out and go open the valve after the police department dispatch calls you, and continue doing that. And you have no idea it's happening. Getting low is okay. That we get an alarm when we get out there. High is a problem. If it happens in the opposite direction where the valve is open, the tank keeps filling and filling and filling and overflowing and overflowing until the neighbor calls and says that there's water running down the road, and then you go out. Those aren't good ways to operate. So the SCADA system is a robust means of monitoring and maintaining our system. In addition, as part of the federal cybersecurity mandate, there are components of a SCADA system that provide system risk and resiliency associated with our water distribution system. On the sanitary sewer side, it gives us an opportunity to monitor our pumps to see how they're operating, monitor their run times remotely, and see if there's a problem. So, for example, we have a pump station that is somewhat remote. It's West Main Street Pump Station. It manages and handles all of the flow from from like the Times Square commercial area, as well as our assisted living facilities and the Lincoln Street Elementary School. If that pump station goes down, we have an alarm. Again, dispatch calls. We don't know what the problem is. We just go out there and try to figure it out on the fly. The opportunity for us to have that failure notified immediately on our SCADA network, and our responders can respond right away and either call a pump truck, get Clean Harbors out, go to the shop and get the equipment that's needed first is critical, and it's part of our resiliency component for the system. One of the goals that we've done in the past is incrementally implement SCADA improvements. So, for example, in order to bring a conventional sewer pump station up to SCADA standards, it's generally an $80,000 task. We've chipped away at some of our pump stations periodically to get them ready. So of the 80,000, 55,000 may be allocated to controls and 25 to communications and alarms and nodes. We've implemented the first portion of that at West Main Street, critical pump station. We did that at Hudson Street, critical pump station. We're doing it at Assabet Tank as we speak under last year's capital project. That's a critical piece of infrastructure. So we've set ourselves up incrementally to implement SCADA in a more cost-effective fashion. We plan on doing that going forward. As I described at your last meeting, we have an incremental pump station improvement line item in our operating budget, where when this SCADA system is implemented, we can bring pump stations online, one a year if we'd like to, as warranted and as needed. So you'll see the split is between water and sewer. That analysis was completed and is specific to which facilities are getting SCADA upgrades and what the cost associated with each one of those is.
And Scott, just for the committee's knowledge, so we are looking at $500,000. That would be a bond, the debt service of which would be paid for out of water and sewer user fees. So that is built, this project and that expense is built into the rate study and the current rate structure for those two enterprise funds.
Thank you, John. That's a good point. So all of the capital projects you see for water and sewer going forward, what we do twice a year is we integrate our capital plan into our rate study going throughout the full 6 years going forward. It includes cash projects that we use out of retained earnings, such as a small vehicle purchase that we'll talk about later, to bonding, like the SCADA project. Those are built into the rate models going forward. So what you see before you is an infiltration and inflow project. It's to eliminate these components. So infiltration and inflow is where clean water enters the sanitary sewer system and ends up being discharged to a treatment plant through our pump stations, and we subsequently have to pay for treatment of it and pay for pumping of it. It takes capacity out of our system and doesn't give us any benefit associated with it. The federal government, EPA, mandated implementation of a system-wide infiltration and inflow analysis. We have a 15-year plan. We're in year 4 right now, where every single sewer pipe in town will be video inspected and smoke tested for inflow and infiltration. So the mandate is not just to look at it and find the problems and then do nothing. The mandate is to look at it, find the problems, and then fix them. So we have on our operating budget allocated approximately $80,000 a year for the investigation. Periodically, we need to make repairs. That's why you see a $60,000 design and $300,000 construction going forward every other year. As we get closer, like for next fiscal year, I'll have a firm project, some tighter numbers. My goal and objective, which should bear true, is that these numbers will go down or they'll get spaced out more. We fix the worst first. So logic tells you eventually we're not going to need 360 every other year. Eventually it's going to stretch quite a ways out because we fixed all the bad pipes and now we're starting to investigate the newer ones and the better conditioned ones. So this is a new capital project you'll see for FY27. It's the replacement of one of our utility bodies. It's proposing replacement of the 2014 utility body. These are the workhorses of our water sewer department. It is a rolling toolbox. Their different vehicles are outfitted for different things. The one you see before you is outfitted primarily on the water service side. So meters, copper pipe, curb stops, corporations, those types of things. Other ones would be outfitted more on the main or the sewer side, and sometimes we will truck around our sewer pipe inspection camera in the back of this vehicle. This is a current project you'll see on the Water Enterprise Fund. So, excuse me, our water division is the proud owner of a poor condition, significant hazard dam located in the towns of Shrewsbury and Boylston. It serves zero purpose for the owner, us. It has not served any purpose since 1953 when we stopped drinking water out of that reservoir. And it was determined to be in poor condition during a dam inspection conducted in 2008. And since then, we've been ordered by the Commonwealth of Mass, the Office of Dam Safety, to repair or remove the dam. Dam construction is very expensive. It makes no sense to spend resources to repair a piece of infrastructure that serves us no purpose. Our goal and objective is to remove the dam. We've invested substantial operating funds in the past doing dam removal feasibility studies and different inspections and investigations. So what you see before you is an FY22 capital request for $50,000. This is a 25% match of what the full project estimate is, which is $200,000. It covers only the design and permitting piece of it. As you can imagine, there's a substantial amount of environmental permitting associated with the dam removal project. We're actually submitting a grant application on Friday, this Friday, for $150,000 to the Commonwealth of Mass to provide us 75% funding for permitting and design of removal. Our hope is that it's awarded. It's a long permitting process. That's why you see that 1-year gap. And then in FY24, we'll have a better cost estimate for the removal. And our goal and objective is to again seek another grant application to fund 75% of the removal. The $800,000 number you see before you is where we believe the removal costs will fall, the full removal costs. But we'll have better numbers as we move through the permitting process. And then hopefully we can get another grant application in and you can see a 25% request when we're sitting here doing this in 2024.
If I may chime in, just a point of clarification. So on this detail sheet, we're showing $50,000 in fiscal 2022. As Scott indicated, that's our share, the 25% of a $200 expense. I'm actually going to update, as we're sitting here on my other computer, I just updated this to match, to be 200,000. So for clarity, when you see this the next time, that will be 200,000. And in the summary sheet for the capital budget, we want to reflect the true cost of this project, which is the 200,000. As far as our local contribution out of free cash, it will be 50. So it's just a matter of how it's represented. I prefer to represent the full cost and acknowledge the fact that we are seeking and obtaining grants. So just next time you see that sheet, it's going to say 200,000, but it won't change materially for what we'll be paying out of the town side at town meeting. Will still be 50,000. So.
Right.
Question on this?
Yeah, 1 minute, John. I had one. Scott, so we're going to get the permits and we're going to drain this down and eventually it's going to dry up mostly. I assume that there's a piece of property around the edges that the town owns. What happens to this piece of property after it's all dried up and been breached and is back to a green field, if you will? What happens then?
The way the reservoir in the dam sits is the dam itself parallels Reservoir Street in Boylston and partially in Shrewsbury. It directly parallels it. The stream, it's a run-of-the-river dam, so it's Rawson Hill Brook that's a tributary to the Assabet. Part of the dam removal is to reestablish that original brook, thalweg, and floodplain. And then beyond that, typically what used to be uplands, like you said, will eventually dry out. The Water Division owns not only the dam, we also own the entire impoundment and a swath of land surrounding the perimeter of the impoundment. Once it's drained and the upland is reestablished, typically there's a monitoring process for 2 to 4 years after that to make sure the wetlands are established. Once that process is over and the wetlands are defined as well as the uplands, then the Water Division owns streamfront property in our neighboring community. At which point, I don't know what we would do with it.
Yeah, what we would look at doing, Mr. Chairman, would be go through a public, a public process to surplus it. It serves us no value. And unfortunately, I'm not sure, but usually these types of properties are landlocked. And so they're not buildable because of their proximity to the wetlands. They tend to be landlocked because around it's developed. And usually it's of only of interest to perhaps an abutter who would like to be able to include it in their parcel. So we'll go through that process. Frankly, for us, to surplus it as we would a non-used piece of land in Northborough would be the way to go, but we're not anticipating that it would have any really significant value. But that remains to be seen. Exactly how much does it recede? You know, what are the restrictions in terms of setbacks and buffers, and who's abutting it, and whether or not that land helps them, perhaps gives them more land to do a subdivision or something else. So we just haven't gotten that far yet. But I guess the short answer to your question is, if we can surplus it, that would be my intention. It serves no purpose for us to hang on to it. And the proceeds from any residual value, the proceeds would go back to the Water Enterprise Fund. They would not return to the general fund.
Okay, thank you. John Rappa, did you have a comment?
Thanks. Yes,
Question?
Dave. A question for Scott. Approximately how much land is impounded behind this dam or stream?
The impoundment is approximately 16 acres.
Okay.
But I'm not exactly sure of the perimeter swath that we own around it.
Okay.
It does go into 2 different towns, so I'd have to look at that. But it's somewhere in the 16 to 20 acre range.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
And by the way, if anybody watching or tunes in and they own an abutting property, we'll sell you the dam for $1 if you'd like. You can have the whole thing,
Proceeds go to the Water Division.
including the liability that goes with it. But seriously, we would get rid of this if somebody wanted it in a second.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Next, you see a utility tractor replacement that's proposed this coming fiscal year, FY22. This is going to replace a 2003 Kubota tractor. The tractor is used primarily to clear our easements. You'll see it's got the opposite split of what you often see. It's got a 40% payment by the Water Division and 60% by sewer. That's because, again, its primary purpose is to mow easements, and we have far more sewer easements than we do water easements. It's a critical piece of equipment in that if our sewer easements aren't properly maintained by mowing, then you end up with woody vegetation. Woody vegetation, one, is not good for sewer pipes. Tree roots love sewer pipes. And secondly, we need to maintain access along our easements in order to maintain and repair our sewer systems. So the tractor that's being replaced is a 2003 Kubota. It will be traded in. The trade-in value is represented in the capital proposal. So this capital project for FY25 and 27 proposes replacement of 2 of our utility trucks. They are a little bit smaller than the prior one. In size and in cost, obviously. Again, these vehicles are the workhorses for our department. They serve both the water and sewer divisions. They typically do not get repurposed. It is a rolling toolbox, and as anybody's toolbox looks in the garage after its useful life expectancy, there's not a lot left to it to salvage and repurpose. So again, we typically get 10 to 12 years out of these, and at times we're hoping our objective is to get 12 to 14 years out of them. So you'll see as we get closer to the 25 and 27 capital years, the numbers will be refined. So this is a new piece of equipment. I believe this is the only new piece of equipment we've talked about tonight. It's a dump truck. This is a F750 dump truck. You see, it's the same size chassis that the bucket truck is. The Water and Sewer Division does not have a dump truck. They'll borrow the dump truck from the highway department. One of the critical needs for this piece of equipment is moving our excavator. So we purchased an excavator 3 years ago under the capital plan with a large trailer. That excavator and trailer movement requires a vehicle of this size, and it also requires a CDL-A license to drive. We have adequate licensure in the Water Sewer Division, CDL-As, that's the tractor trailer side. CDL-B is the non-articulating axles chassis. So they currently have to go borrow the dump truck from the highway garage. Sometimes when there's one of our dump trucks at the highway garage has hot mix in it. It's a heated body. We'll leave hot mix in the garage overnight. And the body will stay warm. And that's a little problematic when you have to move an excavator for a water main break at 3 o'clock in the morning in February, and the dump truck is full of asphalt. It's just, again, we're not a contractor who works out of convenience or a material moving yard. We provide emergency services when things aren't going well, and that they typically don't go well when it's at night and when you least expect it. So having this piece of equipment at the water garage and water sewer garage is critical and essential. And when the new garage is built, we'll have adequate space for it. This is our last capital project we have before you. It is a water main replacement project, and it currently is a placeholder for the out years. But there is a goal of the department as well as DEP to remove dead ends, loop them to provide better redundancy and fire suppression capabilities. So we have dead ends in town. There are some that are not feasible to loop. We have a dead end at the end of Church Street, way over by the Davidian farm stand. You can't loop that. There's nothing to loop it to. On the other hand, we have a dead end on Crawford Street that is over past Franklin Circle. And then we have a dead end on West Street, which is just shy of Crawford. It's a very logical connection to turn that corner with water mains. That does a couple things. It improves our firefighting capabilities in that section of town. It improves water quality because the last person on a dead end line has the oldest water. So it does substantial water quality improvements, as well as reliability. In the event of a break, the water main and the services can be fed from the other direction. So there are a lot of other dead ends around. We have paired dead ends at two of our railroad crossings. Railroad crossings are very expensive to go under. This would be a good project to be funded through this capital plan, through this capital project. That's all I have for the DPW. It's kind of a short list, and I try to get through it relatively quickly.
Scott, through the chair, if I may, Scott, before we transition, actually, we have a good transition to Keith Lavoie from the school department to talk about the school's capital projects. Can we just take a moment, Scott, would you just update the committee on the Green Communities grant program and some of the projects that we were looking at, specifically starting with the streetlight LED conversion, and then some of the school energy efficiency grant programs that we're looking to apply for this cycle?
Sure, John. So the Green Communities program provides grant funding to towns that have met the objectives of the green community by adopting certain policies and best management practices, such as the stretch code for electrical, as well as other components like efficient vehicle purchases and things like that. We've done a couple green community projects in the past. We did an energy management system at Melica Middle School. We did a boiler replacement at the police station. Both successful projects. They're up and running. The cost savings are being seen by both sides of the general fund there through the police station and the Melica Middle School. One project we're looking actively into, but unfortunately, I don't think the timing is going to allow us to pursue it this year, is a streetlight conversion. So the streetlights in Northborough, there's 682 streetlights in Northborough. They're all owned by National Grid, and we pay them per streetlight per year for the use of those streetlights. It's not very cheap. There's an option to purchase the streetlights from National Grid for a fee. They have to arrive at that cost based on the type of fixture, the age of the fixture, and what its residual value is. After purchase, which would be a capital purchase, the Green Communities program can and has funded in the past for other communities conversion of those streetlights to LEDs. That's a full conversion. They have control software that comes with them at times where you can monitor the efficiency of the light. It can see a substantial operational budget savings. We've been budgeting $120,000, $125,000 a year for streetlights. That's been going up, and we could see a substantial savings in the 50% plus range through that purchasing program. Part of the analysis on whether that's a financially feasible approach is finding out what the cost to purchase the lights is. And currently we're waiting on that information from National Grid. I don't expect to receive it in time for this round of green community grants. So we have a backup plan. We don't want to miss this year's grant program where we're eligible for up to $200,000 of pure grant money. So while working on one avenue towards streetlights, we're also working down another avenue for other energy efficiency projects. A lot of them are at the schools. They include weatherization and mechanical insulation. Weatherization, obviously we know what that is. Mechanical insulation is improving, repairing, and enhancing the insulation systems in and around the mechanical systems in the schools. So the hot water pipe doesn't feel hot when you touch it. It's got adequate insulation around it. The heat remains where it belongs in the pipe. We actually have a site visit coming up in about a week and a half at the Z School to take a look at that school specifically. We're also looking at a energy efficiency improvement at the highway garage through a different heating mechanism in some of our cooler spaces. One thing about a highway garage is you generally have three zones. You have sort of your living zone where the office is. You have your working zone where a mechanics bay is. Then you have a storage zone where you're literally storing your equipment. There's a lot of energy savings available by amending the heating systems in those zones so they don't all act the same. So we're looking at those different projects, and we're hoping to put in a grant totaling near $200,000 to provide energy savings both at the highway garage and through a number of our schools.
Yeah. So through the chair, if I may, it's important that the committee knows and the public who may be watching knows that we are always looking for every possible grant we can find. As you know, oftentimes we'll put placeholders in the plan and hundreds of thousands of dollars of projects will just fall off. Green Communities is still relatively new to us. It's a competitive grant structure, so we don't always know what we might be eligible for. But again, I think it is a textbook showing of how the town and the school department work together on these projects. So we look at the best bang for the buck and the best projects and the most grants that we can get for the projects going to give us the best payback. Which just so happens, after the street lights, which is something we'll probably work on, we'll continue to work on for the next cycle. These energy efficiencies projects in the schools is really going to be helpful. And the cost savings are held in the K-8 school budget. So it helps them create some capacity for other programmatic needs. But again, it's just this is real money, could be up to $200,000 that we're going to be pursuing. Just want to make sure that you're aware of it. And as we do get some information, and certainly if we get approved for any of these, we'll be sure to let the committee know how it's playing out. So, all right. I think that's it for Scott. So unless anybody the chair or anybody has any questions for him, we're going to try to hold him to a 13-hour day today and let him go home, if that's okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee. I appreciate the time.
Oh, yeah, it works.
And again, I know we covered a lot of information, as you go through this stuff, as you always do. If questions come up, any staff member is available to come back to answer any questions that you might have.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, next item of business, the K-8 school department. Keith, that's you.
Yes, it is. Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Keith Lavoie. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Operations for the school district. And John, thank you for sharing the capital plan for the Northborough K-8 schools. Like a lot of what Scott said, we are paying very close attention to the pandemic and the outcome of that and how things are spinning for us. I know Superintendent Martineau and John have been in contact frequently about just all the different fallouts, certainly the grant opportunities that have become available to us. And as I kind of work through this capital plan, I'll kind of demonstrate how we've captured some of that in our thinking. Certainly that segue was perfect. Thinking about grant opportunities as well, especially with the energy efficiency, has certainly been part of the conversations we've had. So as you can see from the slide that's in front of you here, this is the Northborough Public Schools FY22 to FY28 approved capital plan from the school committee that we're able to share with you this evening. Some of these items we are going to be able to capture through the operational budget through a variety of creative ways, and I can mention that kind of as we go. Certainly, it's easy to see how this is broken out. It's divided out by the school. The definite long-range plan is in place here, looking carefully at the Peaslee School and the Melican Middle School for possible replacement, and certainly looking at the Massachusetts School Building Authority for grant opportunities with them. There are also other opportunities with that I'm going to share with a few of the other projects that have been listed. Kind of to take one off the top and to make it simple, we do need some snow removal equipment along the lines of what Scott said earlier. These types of equipment does have a lot of wear and tear. This item is a combination of a tractor that would have a snowblower attachment, as well as just walk-behind snowblowers that need replacement for the schools. This would really benefit us. Right now, we are sharing a little bit of equipment between the buildings, and this would really establish a good plan, a good cycling plan for us to get new equipment in place. So we are asking for that in the current fiscal year, and like I said, that will benefit all of the buildings. When we roll down to the Peaslee School does need a lot of consideration for its different systems and some of the things that are almost easy and obvious to see, like the parking lot and walkways. It was noticeable to me most recently with the snow that we've had and the difficulty and the skill that the plow workers have to have in navigating the bumps and the valleys of that parking lot. So certainly that is something that we're looking for too in FY23. But more importantly for FY22, really looking at the classrooms. So we do have some asbestos tile in the flooring at the Peaslee School, and a lot of the adhesive there is failing. So systematically over the years, we have been doing a lot of replacement, kind of classroom by classroom and patchwork throughout that building. But the 15,000 would certainly allow us to go into the 4 or 5, classrooms with the highest need, for those areas. So when you look out further with Peaslee, from a feasibility study and through a renovation itself, the interesting part of that thinking is it's identical to the Lincoln Street School, and that's something that obviously just was renovated and is a beautiful building that has been absolutely awesome to manage during the COVID crisis that we've had. It has a superiority to the other buildings that doesn't exist, and is certainly something that hopefully is in the near future for the town of Northborough. The other items for Peaslee, one of the pieces that has continuously popped up is installation of a new fire monitoring system. This is something that has been carried over throughout the years and would implement a new full sprinkler system. We have been in contact with Chief Parenti, and we don't believe that that's going to be necessary, but we do need to look at the controls of that system so it can be upgraded for better monitoring, kind of along the lines of what Scott shared with the low water levels that happen. Certainly for the fire monitoring, it's best to have controls that are up to speed for quick response time. But we have been in partnership with the fire department around this and are looking towards different solutions. So that kind of wraps up the Peaslee School. As we look to the Z School, we are looking forward to an opportunity of replacing the gym roof. This is a asphalt roof that is above the gym at the Z School. It is time for replacement. We are about 20 plus years out on the renovation project that was at the Z School, and we are going to be putting forth probably in the next fiscal year a statement of interest to get that roof replaced through the accelerated repair program. We've been doing a couple of these projects. We did one, the Finn School in Southborough. We just had a boiler replacement and went through it, even in the middle of COVID, and we were successful at that. So hopefully we'd be able to take advantage of that type of opportunity once it becomes available. The Melican School does have a lot of items on it, both in the near future as well as looking farther out. A lot of these items are things that we're going to be able to take care of through our operational budget, we hope. One item in particular, as you can see, is a need to replace student desks. With the return to more in-person learning, we are purchasing desks for our schools, and a lot of the replacements will be able to be reallocated for this particular line item in the months ahead. The other things that we're planning on deferring, probably even later than FY22, is the science table renovation. This is something that's quite interesting. A lot of these tables are in poor condition. They're slate top tables that are very difficult to move and don't have the electrical capacity to work the equipment that we are using with our students. So looking ahead, I think we're going to defer that down the road a little farther so that we can make sure we capture the entire project the right way. In addition, we have been on a path of replacing carpet and flooring at Melican. This is something also that we think we're going to be able to defer. We did an assessment of that in the last couple of months, and we think we will be able to push that out even farther than FY22, so we don't have to capture it in the immediacy. And then we have been partnering and looking and talking with the recreation department about the resurfacing and the refencing of the tennis courts that has reached its life expectancy. There are places on the tennis court that aren't even close to being true. And certainly the fence is starting to fail in certain locations, and it has gone to an end of life. So we wanted to capture that in this plan and make sure that, we made sure it was on the radar, looking, 2, 3, 4 years ahead down the road. Those are all the major items. I think it's been, it's certainly been an interesting year as we've rolled through with our operational budget. The capturing of different things has been part of the process for us. We've been able to do it pretty well. But I would say at the top priority for us for the immediacy is the snow removal equipment. And I know we're going to be working collaboratively with the town and the school committee on how to capture that in perhaps a different manner, because it doesn't necessarily reach the need of a full-blown capital improvement item. So we're trying to be creative around that and get some of these things done without needing to go for a full capital plan item that would have to land on the warrant or anything of that nature. So that's it, kind of everything in a nutshell. I'd be happy to go into any of the particular projects or answer any questions in greater detail for you.
All right, Dave,
Yeah.
I've got some questions.
All right, Mike, go ahead.
Hi, Mike.
Okay. Hi, Keith. So obviously I have a little heartburn over all the items this year where none of them really are capital. Can you speak, you mentioned getting them into the operational budget. And this is something that this committee dealt with, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, where small items were bundled and put through here. Can you speak to us about what you think will be removed from the capital requests?
Yeah, I do think a lot of the things that we're looking at now is certainly some of the equipment replacement, furniture, and the flooring and carpet are items that we're looking at now that we might be able to cycle through in a different way. Those are probably the highlights of those, Mike. I think when we're really looking at the capital plan itself and the needs of the Peaslee School and Melican School, I mean, those are buildings that are, getting to an age where, we really have to consider, major building system replacement. So I can see that's where this is going to hit the most, but some of the things that you'll see in FY22 and 23 are more than likely things we're going to be able to take care of through operational costs or through grant opportunities, like the student desk. Student desk came through a COVID grant that we've been able to capture.
Thank you.
If I may, through the chair. So when we switched our meeting to tonight to accommodate the committee, the superintendent wasn't able to make it, and so I really appreciate Keith pitch hitting here at the last moment for us. But I've had some significant discussions with the superintendent. When he did send over his capital plan, we spent some time on the phone going through it. And I did let him know right away that a good number of these projects, particularly everything in fiscal 2022, really wouldn't qualify for the capital budget. And just for folks at home that might be watching, a capital project as defined by our policy is $25,000 or more, useful life of 5 years, and would be appropriate for debt financing if you needed to. So obviously we would be issuing debt for things like snow blowers and furniture. But then we had a very, again, I have an excellent working relationship with the school department and the superintendent in particular. And, he was very frank that, last year the school department came in with a 1% budget. This year, the K-8 school budget is coming in at 3.47%. They don't ask for more than they need. And it was a very honest conversation. And I knew where this committee, and especially our longtime members like Mike, were going to go is, hey, listen, this stuff belongs in the operating budget. It's not really capital in nature. But I had a very honest and frank conversation with the superintendent. And just like we did with the police and the fire department, if we expect them to put these things in, to pay for these out of the operating budget, you have to give them at some point a little bit of capacity to absorb that. Now, the deal that this committee had with fire department, police department, even DPW was, all right, listen, if we recommend that we give a little bit more capacity in the operating budget to create an equipment line or a capital outlay line, that money has to really be dedicated to a sort of a mini 5-year equipment replacement program within your operating budget. And if things get bad or you decide down the road to take that money and spend it on something else, don't expect to come back and get a warm reception for giving you more money to do that. So I had some pretty honest discussions with the superintendent, and what I think may come out of this is we're talking about possibly augmenting their fiscal 22 budget request to add $25,000 or $30,000 to an equipment line for them beginning in fiscal 2022 that stays in their budget and is dedicated. And essentially what you'd see is all those little, the frogs and lizards, as we refer to them, they would then be able to plan that is a dedicated money in the operating budget. And over the next 5 years, how would you take care of tile replacement, carpet, desks, things of that nature? And again, I'm grateful that I work with a superintendent in a school department that doesn't come in and say, we need 12% increase. And at the end of the day, they settle for a 3 or a 4. We don't play any of those games here. We have very honest discussions about what they need. But in order for them to really fit this, given the fact that they had a 1% budget increase last year and a 2.47% budget increase this year, because that's the reality of trying to limit the tax impact and the constraints that we have, I would like to work with the superintendent. And frankly, I would like by consensus that this committee would recommend that type of approach to augment the operating budget by a reasonable margin and start to move these projects, because we're not going to fund these under the capital budget. There's no way Mike and Dave in our long-term, it's not appropriate, right? But if we work and they can work it in, then they'll do the same thing all the other departments do, is they'll come up with a 5-year replacement plan for all these small items. But that dedicated line item in their budget needs to remain for this. It can't get raided and diverted to hiring a teacher or an aide, or it has to stay to this. And that would kind of be the discussion and the commitment that we'd be seeking from the school department to go down that path. And again, we have an excellent partnership. Nothing they're asking for is outrageous. And really, in bringing it forward in the fashion that they did, they're identifying the fact that they don't have the capacity for these things. And if it doesn't fit in the capital budget, it's got to fit in the operating budget, or they're going to go without. And we like our departments to have the resources they need to do the mission and the task that we ask of them. So that's the avenue that we're looking to pursue. And I would really just kind of, by consensus, look for your backing when we go to town meeting and as we go through the appropriations committee process, to say, we actually recommend that the school department increase the budget. I don't know how often this happens across the Commonwealth. But the financial planning committee, the town manager, the town administrator, and the appropriations recommends increasing the operating budget of the schools by, you know, $25,000 or $30,000 to take care of these needs. And I think that's a reasonable position. It's a reasonable request. Again, he came in at 2.47% in the operating budget. I mean, I can't ask him to be any more reasonable than that. And when we were in difficult, dire straits in 21, came in at 1%. Always a partner, and I think we need to be a partner going back the other way. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that or any comments.
Dave?
Go ahead, Mike.
So, you know, John, I agree. The way the town, the committees get along with the school is fantastic. And my concerns have nothing to do with the validity of the requests. Looking at them, I mean, they seem reasonable. It's just a matter of making sure we keep the best policies and practices we've had in place. So, you know, if we look the other way because the school needs it, well, then what happens when fire or police or DPW or the town? I definitely love the idea, just like we all do on our personal budgets, have a line item that increases it so they know each and every year they can count on X amount of dollars. And maybe it is something that this committee, when we meet with each of, you know, when we meet with the school, maybe we can request that they kind of report, hey, here's what we're doing with the 25, but there, whatever the dollar amount is, here's where we're putting it. This is the exact maintenance we're doing. You know, so I want to make sure it's understood. I'm not anti-school by any stretch. I think we all get along great. It's just a matter of making sure making sure it's in the right place. And the money's going to be spent if it's approved. It's just making sure it's spent in the right bucket is all. And I definitely would support a line item in their budget so they can take care of this stuff year in and year out.
Yeah, and no, just for the record, this committee working collaboratively with the schools, we've supported every single project they've come forward with, including a $25 million elementary school project, Lincoln Street, as you heard Keith talk about. That enjoyed unanimous support of all the boards and committees and 80% support by the residents at the ballot. And I think the reason for that is because they want to see us work together. This is the way it's supposed to work. You know, we have honest discussions about needs, affordability, but to your point, Mike, it has to find a home. It can't go into capital budget because it doesn't qualify under the policy, but the need's there. It's got to find a home. The home is the operating budget. That's where it belongs.
Yep. Yep, very good. Anybody else?
If I may, through the chair, the only other comment that I would make with regard to the requests, you know, you're looking at a $600,000 roof replacement in fiscal 2023. So not this year, but the next fiscal year. My concern, my general statement of concern is that you just heard from the DPW director who has the most capital projects and equipment needs. We're seeing this bubble because of COVID and then more constraints because we finished out the year where our revenue estimates our revenue receipts came in significantly less than we had originally forecast. So we're seeing this shorting of funds by which we do a pay-as-you-go capital. We've been very lucky. We have over $12 million that we've spent since fiscal 12. We've paid cash for the roof at Proctor. Remember, you've toured it, you've seen it, beautiful. We paid cash for that. That ability, at least in the short term, might not be there. So I think this committee needs to be open to the possibility of us, you know, issuing some general obligation debt. Look, I'm not aware of any community our size that pays cash for a $600,000 roof. That's just been fantastic policy and management on the town's part. But again, the roof needs to be taken care of. If we don't have the cash, you know, we need to be open, and that's not a decision you need to make tonight. It's just an observation that unless things really kind of free up and the economy turns around and we start to see some revenue replacement here, we're going to be in a situation where we need to issue some relatively short-term debt to take care of these projects. You know, that roof needs to be done. And if you just push it off, now you've pushed off 3 years worth of projects into 1 year. You're going to just have to issue a larger bond to take care of those things. Now, there is one bright spot on the horizon, and that is at the federal level, they're talking about a $1.9 trillion aid stimulus package. It passed through the House. I know it's going to have a difficult time in the Senate. They don't like particularly the minimum wage pieces, but that's playing out. The difference is that aid package, unlike all prior COVID aid, has direct funding and aid that will go to municipalities for revenue replacement due to the economic situation. Right now, as currently structured, there's no strings attached. There's no limit to when it needs to be spent. There's a lot of unknowns about how that money would flow to us, but it's supposed to come directly to municipalities and not to the state. So we could find ourselves in a situation where some of that aid will come to us after we've already had our town meeting and we've set our budget and our tax rate. Well, what would happen to those funds? You could have a special town meeting and spend it. That's one option. Or it may roll to free cash, in which case we may find ourselves with a little bit additional capacity. Again, look, nobody knows what's going to happen, but we may find ourselves with some additional capacity for capital projects in fiscal 2023 when we close out, the current fiscal year that we're in. So that's a possibility. So it's not all bleak, but we just need to be open to realizing that we've been very, very lucky that we've paid cash for everything except major building projects since fiscal 12. And because of that, our debt service is down around 4%. That's amazing. No other town is in that position that I'm aware of. So anyway, just a couple of things to keep in mind. I think we're going to get through this cycle, right? We don't have any major building projects. Next year, you're going to have the fire station. You have some fire apparatus potentially. You're going to have this roof project. We're going to be in the bond market anyway. And so when you're going out for bonds for a large building project like a fire station, you wouldn't go out and issue a bond for $600,000. The issuance costs would not make that economically smart. So, but since we're going to be out in the market anyway, we may want to issue some general obligation debt to take care of some of these larger building projects that we're just not likely going to be able to pay cash for. So just, something to think about as we look out. We don't need to make any decisions in this particular cycle, but I think next year we're going to have some conversations about that. We're going to have some conversations about this bubble of projects. How are we going to eliminate the bubble? Because you can't just keep pushing it forward. And I know you know that. So the way you eliminate it is find other ways to pay for it or finance it. So.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else want to talk about the school stuff? No? All right, very good. Thank you, Keith. So move on to the next item of business.
Thank you,
Review
Keith,
of the
for coming.
town's.
Thanks, Keith.
Pleasure, guys.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Keith. Review of the town's legislative priorities letter. I guess that's you, John.
So I know this was distributed by email, but the nexus between this letter and our legislative priorities letter, just for folks at home, this is a list of things that we're asking of our state legislators or legislative delegation. It could be modifications to mandates or regulations, or in many cases, it's asking for funding for specific programs or projects to be enhanced. But there's a nexus between this legislative priorities letter in the capital budget. And I just want to take a moment to kind of connect the dots for everybody. But first of all, just so you know, you did receive a notice on March 8th, Representative Danielle Gregoire, Megan Kilcoyne, Senator Harriet Chandler, and Senator Jamie Eldridge are four members of our legislative delegation. They will be in the selectmen's meeting on March 8th. And we are specifically going to be going over the legislative priorities letter with them and talking about what's most important to the town of Northborough. The process by which this letter was developed was it went out to all departments, boards, and committees. What are the most important things for us that our legislators need to know? We bring it back, we synthesize it, and then we prioritize it. And so I'm not going to go through the letter for you, the whole letter tonight, but I just want to draw your attention to, and I'm going to share this with you. The number one priority of the town is to provide additional Chapter 90 transportation funds. Because so much of what we do, it revolves around maintaining our infrastructure, our roadways, our culverts, and what's coming out of the master planning process. There's walkability, complete streets, bike lanes. These are all things that are roadway infrastructure related. And we have been asking for several years now, the Mass Municipal Association, the state needs to give a $300 million authorization statewide. Right now, they only do 200 million. It's been 200 million for as long as I've been a town manager, a town administrator. It hasn't budged. 1 year in 2015, 2016, they released another $100 million, and we thought, finally, we're going to get there. And then the subsequent year, they went back to $200 million. But in this letter, you heard Scott Charpentier, the DPW director, talking about the $1.1 million funding. Well, this is what he's talking about. This chart right here shows 3 levels of funding. The bottom line, the brown line, is $500,000. That's what we get. This year, we got $512,000 in Chapter 90 funding. That's what we get for the state. If we only spent that, our roadways would be, our roadway grade would be on a very steep downhill slide. What we are looking at right now is this yellow line here, where we spend 1.1 million. We get about 500,000 in Chapter 90 from the state. There's a 300,000 in the operating budget for DPW for roadway maintenance. And then you heard from Scott's presentation at the beginning of the night, another $310,000 in the capital budget to get us to that magic of $1.1 million. $1.1 million is the minimum we need in order to stay on an upward trajectory in terms of our roadway maintenance. In an ideal world, I'd like to see another line here with, $1.5 to $1 to $2 million, and you'd see our roadway trajectory on a much steeper improvement. But look at between 19 and 20. See this little dip here? We were on this nice up. This is our roadway. We did our pavement management plan, right? And we've been doing 1.1, 1.1, 1.1, 1.1. This is still 1.1 between 12 and 20. The difference is we have these culvert projects, and some of them are $300,000 projects. And that has siphoned off money from roadway surfacing. This is just for the surface, the drivable surface. And so we've seen a little dip as we've taken care of this backlog of culvert projects. And that's why the DPW director proposed in the capital budget to have a separate $250,000 line for dealing with culverts, so that the full 1.1 would be dedicated towards surface, the roadway surface improvements. But anyway, this is what he's talking about, this need right here, but this is where we want to be. So this should start picking up. We've done the Church Street culvert, which was $2 million. We did the Otis Street culvert, which was, I think, about $500,000. We did the Rice Ave, which was $350,000. We did the Fisher Street, which I believe was about $300,000. Now we're doing Ridge Road, Lyman Street, and Davis, and those are all bouncing around about $100,000 each. So the large, most expensive ones we've worked our way through, but we have 75 culverts of varying size and various costs. So we do need to have additional funding to stay on this trajectory, but also to deal with our infrastructure needs. And again, I want everybody at home watching this to keep in mind, when you want more sidewalks in neighborhoods, new sidewalks, that we are struggling because of the limited funding we're receiving from the state. We struggle to maintain our current sidewalks. And it just doesn't make good sense to build new sidewalks if you're allowing the ones you have to go into disrepair and become a liability. So we need to fix it first, and we need to balance taking care of our roadways and balancing that with the infrastructure under the roadways, like culverts and water and sewer pipes. You have to balance all of that with the resources you have. So I just wanted to draw your attention to this. The balance of this, legislative priorities letter, the top 2 priorities are Chapter 90, transportation funding, And the second one is just state aid in general, how the state shares its revenues with the town of Northborough. And so that's what the balance of these are. We want to make sure that they're reimbursing the school department for the special education circuit breaker, regional transportation, unrestricted general government aid. And again, why is state aid so critical to Northborough? I love to summarize these things in one chart. State aid as a percentage of our revenues in Northborough used to be 13.1% of our operating budget. It is now about 8% because state aid goes up about 1 or 1.5% a year. Our operating budgets go up about 3.5% to 4% to maintain the current level of services. So as a percentage of the operating budget, we have this very long, very negative trend with regard to state aid. So general revenue and state aid is one thing, but in terms of the state must be a partner with infrastructure and roadway. That is basically, it's fundamental to economic development and sustaining our economy. They need to do more to support the town, to support our roadway infrastructure. And that's really the bottom line. That's why it's our number one priority. But again, you see how all these things relate. You have a pavement management plan, so you know what you have and what state it's in. If you defer or you fund it at 1.1 or 800,000, we can tell you exactly what that does for our long-term grade on our roadways. So see, everybody always likes to measure, like if you give us this, what do we get for it? Equally as important, if you don't fully fund something, you need to know what the repercussions of that decision are. So in fiscal 21, we made a conscious decision as a community to defer some equipment purchases, right? We know what that consequence is going to be. We're going to push a couple projects out into 22, 23. We're going to have to find a way to get caught up again, right? But because we were making regular investments in our infrastructure and regular investments in our buildings and our roadways, we know we can afford to take a pause in an emergency for a year or two, right? Because we know what the consequences are. We're not just blindly ignoring infrastructure and equipment needs, but we need to get back on track is really the bottom line. And the state needs to be a partner in that approach. And that's the number one priority for us when we sit down with them on the 8th. So you are all invited to watch that meeting. You can hear their responses. But it's just important to connect the dots because all these things are interrelated in our ability to be successful in what it is we do as a town. And it's important for residents who, I understand, would like a new sidewalk or would like their road to be paved, understanding that there are constraints, but there's a plan too. So we know when we don't do something, we know the deferral and we know the expense of that deferral. It's an educated decision because either you just don't have the money or you're making a conscious decision just to delay it temporarily, knowing you're going to get back to it. So, and that's the magic of this committee. This is your job to understand those things and to comment on, are we catching everything? Are we missing things? Is this deferral something that you believe we can reasonably do, in fiscal 21? It all comes back together. The bottom line is these expenses don't go away. Just like if you decide not to replace your roof when it's at the end of its useful life, yeah, you can save money and not replace it that year, but 2 years later, it's going to leak. You're going to have water damage and mold. You're not saving money by deferring these things. The right thing to do is to have a good plan. And as Mike always used to state for years and years going back, departments need to have a reasonable expectation that this plan will be funded. Projects will move up and back based on available funding and grants and other things, but it needs to be a reasonable plan. That it's not a wish list. We just don't load these projects in and hope for the best. You need to actively manage it so things will move around. This year, you saw more movement in the out years than you have in any time recently. And it's because we made a decision to postpone things in 21. We have fiscal constraints in 2022. This stuff's moving around, but now it all needs to find a home and we need to identify appropriate funding to get through these projects. But I think it's going to come to a head in fiscal 2023 where we might actually have to issue some general obligation debt for large equipment and items that we haven't had to do previously, but most towns do that every year. So actually, I'll tell you the dirty secret. Most towns, because you ever hear people say, boy, how come we have so many DPW trucks and equipment on the warrant? I don't see them on other towns. You know what the dirty little secret is? Other towns use their Chapter 90 funds. Instead of putting them into the roadways, they buy equipment with them, because you don't have to go to town meeting for that. You can just go and buy that truck, and you never go to town meeting and never gets debated. But what happens is the roadways don't. You also see those towns coming back. I won't name any names, but one was in the paper recently looking for $14 million bond to fix their roads. Why? They've been buying equipment with their Chapter 90 and haven't been taking care of their roads. For us, we try to balance everything. So I appreciate the indulgence of and I know I'm speaking to the choir, but I think it's important. We have some newer members here, but we also have people now that might be watching from home, and we have candidates that have run for boards that make wild statements like we have too many trucks and we need to put money in the sidewalks, or they're not educated. They're not educated opinions, and part of what we need to do is to educate the residents and the other boards and committees about these things. So thank you.
All right, that takes care of that. Next item is our next meeting date, which appears to be March 2nd.
So on March 2nd, Mr. Chairman, we'll give you the full 6-year capital plan. You've gotten it in bits and pieces, but you'll get the full plan over 6 years through all the departments. We are going to have a couple of placeholders. I mentioned the Master Plan Implementation Committee. We are going to put a placeholder in there a couple years out. Once that committee gets going, they may want to do a downtown downtown economic development study, or it could be a traffic study. It could be a complete streets, a bike, sidewalk. I don't know what's going to come out of there for priorities, but we want to at least acknowledge a placeholder in the capital plan that when the implementation committee completes their work and they decide what the priorities are out of that plan, that some of those priorities are going to land in your capital improvement plan. So we just kind of want to acknowledge that they're going to drop in here, and depending on the nature of it, we're going to need to find some capacity to implement that. Unlike some of our equipment and infrastructure needs, which we know what they are and we can plan for them, I don't think it's reasonable after going through the master plan implementation, the master plan planning process, which was almost a 2-year process, and then the implementation committee does their thing. I wouldn't want that to drop in 2027. So I think it's reasonable to see something out years 2 or 3, depending on the nature of it. So just want to introduce that tonight and let you know that I will just have a placeholder. It'll say to be determined, because I don't know what it is or how much it's going to cost. But I do want to acknowledge that when, after this community-wide planning process comes to fruition and we get clear indication that this is a top priority, it needs to fit somewhere in the middle to the front of the plan, in my opinion. But we can debate that when we get more information. At your next meeting, we'll bring in the community preservation.
Something's going to come in.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear you.
No, I was just saying that it's reasonable to think that after all this planning, that something will come of all that planning and all of that work. And I think it behooves us to plan for that, best we can.
And I think people are going to be anxious once we, as a community, agree on this is our priority. We're not going to want to wait 6 years, because we're not so rigid to say, like, if something comes in, it has to go all the way in the out years and wait 6 years to come up. It depends on what it is. It depends on what the priority is, and that's why this is a living, breathing document that, within reason, will move around from year to year. Next meeting, also, we're going to try to get someone in to go over the Community Preservation Act projects, the ones that are of a capital nature. Historically, this committee has taken a position on. One, actually, I meant to have he covered it. Scott Charpentier covered it the last time he met with you guys, the pickleball project down on 135. So, you've gotten documentation on that. But you'll see a couple of these, like the Memorial Field project he talked about, and the dog park, those will be community preservation projects, at least partially funded that way. My favorite way to do those type of community projects, it's like what you've seen us do down at 135. You know, you get might get a grant, a little bit of community preservation funds, and have Assabet students come in and provide the labor. I mean, that's a win all around for us. It takes a couple of years to get something like that to come together and to line up with grants. And it takes a year or two to get on Assabet Valley Regional High School to get on their schedule to come do a project, because they need to plan out at least a year or two in advance for their students. So it takes a little bit, but when it comes together, you get what happened down at Memorial Field, right? That whole snack shack got a complete gut overhaul. And boy, it cost us pennies on the dollar, because all the labor was provided for by Assabet, and they got the value of the project. And as you know, the water treatment, the water garage project that the DPW director talked about at his last meeting, the Assabet's coming in doing the whole tenant fit out on the inside. So it's great. It's just, that's why you plan, so you can bring all those resources together.
Okay.
You guys are looking at me like, is he going to stop talking? Because we'd like to go home now, or at least turn our computers off.
We are home.
You are home. I'm not. I'm still here. But this is good. This is good stuff. It's exciting. You know, you should feel proud about what this committee's done.
So any other business we need to talk about?
I don't have anything else this evening, Mr. Chairman. If given the information that we went through, and by the way, in the packet, and we didn't get into it, you have all of the fleet list and all the rolling stock from DPW. So if you want to kind of match that up to the plan and when he's replacing stuff, you know, we want you to have the full picture of what we're doing here. So you do have that. If there's any other information, I can't recall, John, if you were on the committee and received the information about, we have studies about the dam removal that we've done, that we've provided. We can make those available if anybody's interested in receiving those. But if there's any other information pertaining to any of these projects that you would like from us, just let us know. We're happy to give you anything that you want.
All right. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have to do a roll call vote again. Mike Hodge, how do you vote?
Aye.
John Rappa?
Aye.
Bill Peterson?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Good night, gentlemen, and thank you.